This year, the country will begin commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. While there were more battles in Virginia than any other state, the farmers of the Old Dominion also suffered greatly. Virginia farmland and plantations were badly damaged or destroyed. Farms were transformed into camps made into makeshift clinics to care for the sick and dying, and fields, once green with crops, became the final resting place as battles between the North and South overtook the land. It was truly a time of devastation.
They were constantly taking cattle. Troops were, both northern and southern troops, were always on the lookout for livestock, cattle, sheep, hogs, and sometimes they paid farmers for what they took. Most often they didn't. But also in the battles and things, they destroyed a lot of agricultural equipment and infrastructure.
Food was critical to both Lee and Grant's armies. Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, where farms were fertile, became known as the breadbasket of the Confederacy. That made them a strategic target for the Union.
If we think of recovery as simply production levels rising to pre-war levels, that has happened by 1880. There are only a couple of statistics that aren't higher than they were in 1860.
Farmers were able to recover in the valley because of their knowledge of the land and good stewardship. The story wasn't quite the same for wealthy plantation owners in Virginia. Many of them struggled when their fields were left fallow from overproduction of tobacco. The women of the household had to take over the plantations for their husbands and sons who left to fight in the war. And some slaves fled the plantations in hopes of gaining freedom with the Union. When Northern armies came through, plantation crops were destroyed and passing troops burned homes. The combination of few men, lost crops, and the lack of slave labor destroyed the foundation of the plantation economy. But Shirley Plantation on the banks of the James River was spared because of a spontaneous act of kindness.
The Battle of Malvern Hill occurs, which is the last day of the 7 days battles. The Union military is victorious. McClellan realizes there are over 700 of his own men whom are wounded and dying. So he decides to leave these men here at Shirley, sets up the entire property as a field hospital, especially because of the riverfront access. Well, the ladies of the property, who are still living here in the house, decide to go to action. They run out onto the lawn, they tear up their bed linens for bandages, make soup, make bread, write letters for the dying. Out of this act of kindness, McClellan grants this property a Union Federal Standing Order of Safeguard. It basically states that under the penalty of death, no men of the Union Army were to harm this place or any of the inhabitants.
Shirley Plantation's owner, Carter Hill, was still at the farm and was a very good farmer. He was able to continue profiting from his crops during the war, and many of his slaves stayed on as laborers to work the fields following the war because of the compassion shown to the slaves at the farm. Smart farmers like Hill and smaller landowners throughout Virginia were able to bounce back much quicker after the war, but most of the great plantations were carved up and sold. For more information, go to virginiacivilwar.org. Reporting in Shenandoah County, I'm Sherry McKinney.